and make sense of the horrific elements that make up the Silver Scream. Chapter 1. The American Nightmare. How did that twat Colin Barlow make the cover of Bloody Psychiatry now? The thought had consumed the usually brilliant mind of Dr. Ian Black ever since he had rifled through the mail earlier that Monday morning. How had his former rival at Oxford been published before he was? They had always managed to be neck and neck in the class rankings back home in his native England. Now, however, it appeared that after 20 years in the field, Barlow had struck a crippling blow. In these morning hours, the doctor found himself reflecting on his life and very existence in his nondescript office on the outskirts of Salem, Massachusetts. Here he was, at 46 years of age, practically unpublished compared to Colin Barlow's endless streak of pop psychology ramblings. It burned him up inside. Years ago, he began writing a book on serial killers, his particular area of interest, but he never could hone the thesis enough to make it past the first few chapters. He knew that his own work was certainly more important than Colin's. Sure, he had always leaned away from the lightness of psychology and towards the darkest of cases, the darkest of minds, but nevertheless minds still worth exploring, perhaps even more so. Maybe if he hadn't given so much time to his patients, maybe if he'd spent more time researching, or perhaps if he was a bit more mainstream, he might have beaten Barlow to such an honor. However, Dr. Black had never grasped the notion of publish or perish, and now it seemed he was doomed to the latter, much like the victims of the serial killers that he had fixated on in his work. Sometimes when he was most upset, his pain would manifest itself physically, a trait he had rather disliked in himself, but as a psychologist knew that he should forgive. It was certainly easier for him to give advice to a patient than to follow it himself. The pain, much like the sharp stab of a knife to the gut, almost always presented itself in the underside of his protruding belly, an area that had become even more pronounced as he approached his 50s. Like the slice of a blade, it would come on excruciatingly quickly, only to dissipate almost as expeditiously as it had arrived, offering him a breath of relief shortly thereafter. This time, however, he could not have known that the feeling would lodge there for the months to come, as he would soon find himself teetering on the edge of purgatory, his life weighed in the balance. The pain had begun with Barlow, but it would move well beyond him, beyond even Dr. Black himself. Should he call Barlow to congratulate him? What? And give him the satisfaction? He couldn't possibly bear to have the metaphorical knife driven deeper. Besides, he had a big day ahead and a new patient with whom he was just beginning to work. The focus needed to shift off of publishing, or the lack thereof, and onto the patients, just as it always had for Dr. Black. He needed to focus on a distraction. He looked around at his plain, beige room with its nondescript carpeting and bluish-gray couch. The unexciting couch and its equally sad coffee table served as the main focal point of an otherwise dull existence. On his wooden desk, clutter every which way, surrounding his laptop and phone system. In the corner of the office sat a TV on a stand showing a newscast. The news proved just the trick to distract him, as it offered a feature story by his favorite local newswoman, Laura Lambesis. Laura was gorgeous. She had a tight body, ethnically ambiguous olive skin, and ombre-colored hair that she wore long, its natural waves cascading below her shoulders and onto her chest. He always liked watching her and began to fantasize about what he might do if she were in front of him. He imagined her skin smelled of orchids, and he would catch just a whiff of it as he softly kissed the flesh of her neck. It was difficult to concentrate on the newscast with the sexuality that exuded from Laura. Had the doctor been able to hone in on what she was saying, he might have heard the report of a string of teen suicides in the upstate New York town of Clifton Park. A whole town with a psychiatric problem, and national news attention might have been just the thing to make his career. Instead, the doctor found himself staring at Laura's chest, imagining her in front of him wearing far less than the already skimpy outfit she wore.